After working with creatives for the last 11 years, I've heard one statement more than any other. I hate marketing. I get it. It can be painful trying to figure out how to market your book or movie or comic. When I started podcasting, I had no clue how to do any of it. I was afraid of doing it wrong, looking like an idiot or making a marketing mistake that I could not recover from. It can be paralyzing. Sound familiar? If it does, let me see if I can help you. I got my MBA in marketing, so you don't have to. Sign up for a free session today to talk about your marketing goals and to see if we're a good fit. If nothing else, you'll get some insights that might ease your mind. Go to southgatesmallbusiness.com and sign up for a free session today. Welcome to Alley Chats. I'm your host, Rob Southgate. Alley Chats is a virtual artist alley featuring interviews with artists, filmmakers, podcasters, writers, really any creative person you might find at a pop culture convention. My goal is to help draw attention to cool people and to hopefully help them get some new fans. I want this podcast to raise up these amazing people and to inspire you, the listener, to chase your dreams as well. You can follow Alley Chats on Facebook and join the conversation. I'll add more social media in the future, but for now, that's the best place to interact with me. You can also email me directly if you would like to be a guest or have a guest suggestion. My email is rob@smgpods.com. Today's guest is Bram Stoker Award winner Jeff Strand. His novels are usually classified as horror, but really they're all over the place, almost always with a great big dose of humor. He's a guest at the Books and Brews event coming up this August 3rd in Evanston, Illinois. There's a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. Anyway, here's Jeff. So every time I start these, I say I'm so excited to talk to so-and-so, blank, whatever. And it's always because I've never met them or I haven't talked to them in years. And Jeff and I actually know each other. I've talked to you more recently, like within the last year. We had a wonderful weekend together. That's going to sound bad, isn't it?
No,
Well,
that's
we were skiing and holding hands the whole time, weren't we, Jeff? We can admit
absolutely.
it. Absolutely. So
The
today I
world
have
should
Jeff
know.
Strand with me. I'm sorry, what, Jeff?
The world should know.
The world should know. We're there. Uh, I have Jeff Strand with me. Uh, I am really excited to talk to you because the last time I didn't get to interview you. I went to one of your panels and I asked you some questions, but that's all I got out of it, So this is a chance to kind of mix it up a little bit. I promise you, Jeff, as I've said before, I'll be gentle with you. So, so I have Jeff Strand. Jeff, tell people who you are. Tell them a little background, and then we'll get into it.
I am Jeff Strand. I've written a lot of books. My first book came out in 2000. I've done about 60 since then.
Wow.
Mostly horror with lots of humor in it. Some books that are just comedies. Some of my more recent books have been for kids, but I also do the, gory adult stuff at the same time. So if you ask people to describe me, they say, oh, he's the horror comedy guy. So I do a lot more than that, but that's what we'll go with as the quick answer.
Okay. Well, it's funny because when I knew that you were going to be on Writers Row, my first thought was going back to Freaky Briefs, where I'm like, I thought those were great stories. And I'm like, I thought of you. I never thought of you as the comedy horror guy. I thought of you as the horror guy who can be funny. So it's really funny that yeah, whatever your thing is that you had as an entry point is the thing that you kind of know about people. So and then actually we spent the whole time talking about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So I guess I should have gone, you're the comedy guy. So Jeff, let's start there, not with tomatoes, but let's start right now. What's your latest book that's out or
The
coming out?
latest thing that just came out, and I had two books come out like within a week of each other because one was self-published and one was big publisher, and that's just the way it worked out. So Technically, my most recent is a horror novel called Creep Out, which is my contribution to the evil ventriloquist dummy genre.
It's a good
And
genre.
so that was, it's a little bit, it's a horror novel. There's lots of humor in it, so it's on brand. It's a little bit more of a slow burn, creepy kind of thing than what I normally do. I'm usually more the in your face. So this is, I like to mix it up a little bit. But there's that. And then right before that, my middle grade horror novel, It Watches in the Dark, came out from Source Books. So and that is about two twins who are on a canoe trip with their father. There's an accident. He gets badly hurt. They end up in this very weird village where the villagers worship a giant scarecrow that is alive.
Oh, fun. So that's a YA novel?
Middle grade. So it's
Middle grade. Wow. So how is that doing? Are you getting a lot of middle grade people showing up at things that you're at?
not really. I actually haven't done that many events since it started. I've, my schedule this year is as busy as it is any other year, but it's all kind of compressed.
Okay.
So like from August through the end of October, it's just one thing after another. But the summer's been kind of quiet.
Okay. Well, you're going to make it out to, which is why I'm talking. You're going to make it out to Books and Brews,
Right. That
which
is going
is
to be the first one. That's the starting point where things just go berserk. That'll be my first
great.
event
I'm
of
going
the
to
month.
get you at the beginning then, which is
Yes.
awesome. Uh, just to plug it, it's Books and Brews. It's Double Clutch Brewing Company. There's going to be 40 authors there. I'm sorry, I'm jumping through. There are going to be 40 authors there. It's at Double Clutch Brewing Company, which is in Evanston, Illinois, on August 3rd. And Jeff is one of the people that you're going to be able to come and meet and buy his books and get signatures. And if you haven't met Jeff in person, he's a fantastic person to meet. You're going to really enjoy it. So come out and meet him, and yeah, and bring your ventriloquist dummy. I'm sure he's going to be thrilled.
Oh, I'll sign any ventriloquist dummies people want to bring.
So with Creep Out, with ventriloquist dummies, did you just like the genre, or are you creeped out by these things?
I'm not really creeped out by them. It's a case of when I start a new horror novel, it's like, okay, what haven't I done before? And at this point, I'm been doing it long enough that it's harder and harder to think, okay, what haven't I done? I've done werewolves, vampires, zombies, serial killers, Lovecraftian horror, folk horror, all that. So it's like, okay, well, but I haven't done a doll book. So then I just sort of, okay, ventriloquist dummy, but that's been done. What can I do to mix that up? And so I thought, well, the standard ventriloquist dummy is the little girl's doll is alive and no one believes her. And one by one, it kills her babysitter, then it goes after her stepmother or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So I thought,
Annabelle or
okay.
Talking Tina or any of those.
So I thought, well, I'll just combine that with survival horror. So our hero Ezra basically inherits a ventriloquist dummy from his father when he dies, finds out it's alive very early on, but is trapped in a ravine with this evil dummy. So it's kind of single location survival horror mixed with the ventriloquist dummy genre.
I love it, and I love the cover of the book.
Yes,
Uh,
that
I'm sorry, who?
Chad Lutsky. He's also
Chad
an author,
Lutsky.
but he does covers.
I uh, I saw it pop up on my Facebook feed this week, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh, Jeff, really? Now I've got this dummy that's going to be living in my head. It's got space in there now. Thanks a lot." Yeah, that's a good one. Did you ever see any of those dummy movies like Magic?
Oh yeah, I've seen all of them.
When I was a kid, that was on one night. I was with our neighbors' kids. We were all, watching TV, and they wanted to watch the movie Magic because they thought it was about magic. And I don't think I've ever seen those kids cry harder than what was happening. Like we're watching that movie, and all of a sudden it's like, "Ah!" And I'm like, oh yeah, we need to watch this thing to the end. This is fantastic.
It's gonna be a fun, lighthearted romp in the life of a magician.
That's right. You also have, and I think you're crossing genres here, spiders versus clowns. Uh, Now, I'm going to ask you each thing. Do any of these things creep you out, and that's why you lean into them, or are you just like, hey, I haven't done clowns or spiders. Let's
Clowns?
combine them.
No. Spiders? Yes. So
Oh,
I've never had a fear of clowns, but I love scary clowns. That's
yeah.
probably like the definitive example of horror comedy. So actually, the clowns in this one are the good guys, which was not. I wanted to do a clown book, and I've had clown elements in various other things I've done, but I've never done just a full-on clown book. So my thought was, I'm going to write the scariest clown book ever. But then I read an article about how, based on stuff like, the success of the new Stephen King's It movie and various other things, clowns were losing their jobs because like people don't like clowns. And they're like, clowns are, we deliver joy to children. But because of all the scary clown stuff, they were losing their jobs. So I thought, oh, that's an interesting twist. I haven't seen that. So in my book, the clowns are good guys who have lost their jobs at the circus because people don't like clowns anymore. And so then they reluctantly have to take a job at a haunted house because that's the only way to make ends meet. But they do it on the same opening night that a giant spider invasion goes through the small town. So if a clown was standing here, I'd say, hey, clown. If a tarantula was standing here, I'd be up on the chair getting away from it. So it's like only one fear that I actually have, but I like the idea of primal fear versus primal fear because a lot of people are scared of both. So, like, which side do you root for?
Well, it's funny because when I saw the cover originally, that was I I didn't know you weren't or that the clowns were going to be the heroes, but when I saw the title and I saw the clown on the cover and the spider webs, my reaction was like you just said, oh, Primal Fear versus Primal Fear. This is Godzilla versus King Kong, only if they were both scary. And then yeah, the clowns aren't scary. They're just guys jobbing and they got to deal with it. I actually have a friend who's a professional clown. He was actually on Bozo for years.
Oh,
And when you bring up the creepy clown thing to him, he doesn't find it funny at all. He's like, this is my profession. I work very hard at it. And he gets very upset by all of that. And he said the same thing. Do you remember we'll call it the clown flap, which is a great name
yeah,
for a book, from a few years ago? And there was like at a Rose Hill Cemetery, there was the guy in the clown outfit that was in the cemetery. And
yep.
yeah, my friend was like so upset by that because she's like, this is going to cost people jobs, and so it's like I should send him your book. He'll get all upset at first,
I
but
think
then
it's a
he'll.
mutual friend who has read the book, if
It
I'm
might
thinking
be.
of the right person.
It might be. It might be. Uh, yeah, that I was standing outside of the gates of that cemetery and didn't realize I was standing right where that clown had been, and it really puts it in perspective when you realize that truly did just happen the way it showed on the news. Those people were standing there because ghost tours and that go there. Somebody got into that cemetery dressed as a clown, danced around a little bit, and then ran off. I mean, oh my God. I think I may have had a heart attack if I'd seen that. And I'm not afraid of clowns.
Yep.
I'm not afraid of spiders either, Jeff, so I can save you if need be.
All right,
If
I
need
will
be.
let you know.
So, what got you started writing horror?
I started writing humor, so I didn't want to be Stephen King. I wanted to be, Douglas Adams or Dave Barry. So my first few books are just pure comedies, and I've kind of weaved back into that. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is just pure comedy, and
Yeah.
I a bunch of young adult books that are just comedy. But horror really became, I had a very mild interest in it, but I was too squeamish. So it's like I liked the classic stuff, but I didn't want anything with gore in it, ironically. Because it wasn't actually until high school that I sort of, fell in with a group of friends, and their process was, instead of getting drunk and partying on weekends, we rent 5 horror movies from the local video store and watch them all night. So that's what my high school misspent time was eating pizza and watching horror movies. So then I became a huge fan. So then it just sort of fell into what I was writing. So now I'm, you know, I've been a hardcore horror fan for my entire adult life, but it wasn't something that I was born with. It hit around, high school.
Yeah, actually, I was one of those kids that was attracted to it but scared. So we'd go to the haunted house and I'd cry and all that. And I was the same. We may have been in the same friend group. The more we talk, the more we are crossing paths here. That was my high school. Uh, I remember we'd go and we'd get pizza and we'd go to the local video store and it would be three, four, five movies. I don't know how we watched that many in a night, but we'd do it. And it was
Yep,
just whatever was on that horror shelf. If it
yep.
looked gory and weird, it was like, yep, that's an easy one. We're taking that.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of deliberation. Okay, does this movie meet our standards? Let's look up some reviews. Let's get some word of mouth. It was, oh, that's got a cool cover. Let's do that one. And then, grab five and pick up
Yeah.
the Domino's pizza, and you've got yourselves a well spent Saturday night.
So we're going to talk about teenage Jeff for a second. Were you more into the slasher type? Did you like the monster type? What was your genre that if you saw it, it was like, yeah, okay, that's the one we got to get, like immediately.
I liked both really. I've never had like a specific genre that's like, okay, that's my jam. It's more, based on the individual movie. Like for example, werewolves are not really even one of my favorite monsters, but there are some really good werewolf movies out there. So werewolves in general, I've done Wolf Hunt 1, 2, and 3, which are werewolf books, so that's worked out well for me. But if you said, what are your favorite monsters, werewolves wouldn't necessarily be near the top, but An American Werewolf in London is one of the best horror films ever made. I
It's
love
amazing.
Dog
Yeah.
Soldiers. I love Ginger Snap. So it just so happens that really well told stories have been done in the werewolf genre. So it was never, oh, I love slash movies. I kind of liked it all. And because we were watching, five movies a night, we could pretty much clear out the video store's horror selection. It was like, okay, what's new? Let's stand by the new releases section until they bring the new stuff out. And so I was, anything good.
Want more shows like this? We've got a lot more on the Southgate Media Group Patreon page. Some free, some paid. Plus, there's exclusive content for subscribers only. Follow the link in the show notes or look up Southgate Media Group on Patreon and check out the cool stuff we're doing over there. You won't be sorry. On August 3rd, 2024, Books of Horror is presenting Books and Brews at Double Clutch Brewing Company in Evanston, Illinois. There will be over 40 horror authors for a book signing and meetup from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. that day. Meet your favorite authors, discover new authors, meet Books of Horror friends in real life, including the author I'm talking with on this podcast. Oh, and I'll be there too. This is an all ages event. Food, alcohol, and non alcoholic beverages will be available. No outside food or drinks will be allowed. Search for Books of Horror Presents Books and Brews on Facebook events for more information, or click on the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. So, what would you say if I had to press you for your top three horror movies? You and I are having a night. We're going to get a pizza and watch three, and you're going to introduce me to three. What would you pick as your top three?
Top three would be Shaun of the Dead, if you count that as horror. It could
I
also
do.
just would be comedy. Um, uh, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the
Mm.
1973 one, and Return of the Living Dead, which holds up insanely well for a mid 80s movie.
Yeah, I don't know how we weren't best friends in high school, mainly because we didn't go, but those fall right. Return of the Living Dead is that one and Reanimator are the two that I talk about all the time as two of the greatest horror comedy movies of all
Yeah.
time.
Reanimator would be pretty high if we kept going. I got to
Yeah,
see Reanimator in the theater not that long ago, and it totally holds up.
it does. It does. Well, I saw it on the original release, like the night it came out. We went in and saw it, and I remember walking out with my friend and just like wanting to shout from the rooftops, like, this is the greatest movie. Same thing happened with Return of the Living Dead, and the dead stuff wasn't popular then. So we're at school telling everybody about this movie. They're like, oh, stupid zombie movie. We're like, no, you don't understand. Plus, it had that punk soundtrack. Like it was amazing.
It inspired all kinds of. It doesn't get enough credit. It's like
Right.
it was fast zombies before 28 Days Later. It's talking zombies. It's meta before Scream because it
Yep.
comes from the premise that Night of the Living Dead was a real movie that they changed around. It does all kinds of stuff. Brains came from Return of the Living Dead. That didn't exist in zombie lore before Return of the Dead. Now it's, an established part of it. So I get on the soapbox like you have no understanding of how much Night of the Living or Return of the Living Dead has contributed to horror cinema.
Well, it's funny. I remember reading an article about it, and it was Dan O'Banion made that, and he had worked with Romero, and the stuff in Return of the Living Dead is the stuff that he wanted put in, and Romero was like, "No, these are the lines of the coloring book that we've established." So he didn't want that stuff in there, and O'Banion was like, "Okay, I'm going to make a movie with all that stuff,"
It
and that's
throws
what he
out the
made.
rules and it's amazing
Yeah, and
because
then you
the
watch something
characters know
like
the rules, they're just the movie's breaking them.
then you watch something like The Walking Dead, and there's so many things in it that you go, but that all came. And Walking Dead doesn't even say they're zombies; it's just an infection. But there's stuff in Walking Dead that I'd watch and go, well, that was the first time anybody saw that was Return of the Living Dead, you know. And Reanimator is the other one. To me, like I had the poster, and it was almost the size of my ceiling in my room. The one that had the greatest tagline of any movie poster ever. Dr. Herbert West has a good head on his shoulders and one in the tray on his desk. I mean, is there anything better? I mean, I
There's
just
not.
used to love that. Love that. Well, those are great ones. And yeah, if you kept going, I'm sure you'd add Werewolf in London. I mean, these are touchstones. So yeah, I'm with you. Okay, writing horror. You said you started in comedy. You liked writing comedy. And there is such a close connection. Do you see horror and comedy as being kind of the same thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
They can be. It depends how you do it, and I try to mix it up. You can do it as comic relief, where it's a serious horror film, or sorry, serious horror book that just has moments of levity. But you can also do it as just, complete absurdism. There's a wide range. I don't think horror has to have humor in it. I don't think they're necessarily two sides of the same coin, but they do, if done well, they go together really well.
I agree. I mean, you mentioned Shaun of the Dead. That is a pitch perfect film.
Shaun of the Dead is one of the rare examples that it works. If you don't think it's funny at all, it works really well as a horror film. If you're not into the horror, it works really well as a comedy. It's one of those that gets both sides of the equation really well done.
Yeah. So what do you think writing horror, since you started in comedy, moved into horror, what do you think that has taught you?
I'm not sure it's necessarily taught me anything except that it is part of just my natural inclination. So if I was, forced to write a completely serious book, I could do it, but that's just not the way my mind works. I tend to go for the funny dialogue and more of the absurd situations, but I, change it up from books. So My Pretties has a lot of humor in it, but it's all down to earth humor, what these characters would actually say. It's just meant to be two kind of funny characters who are cast into a really nightmare situation. Whereas Clowns versus Spiders is a full-on horror comedy. It's just, the situation's insane, and I tried to make it as funny as possible throughout, while also putting a genuine thread in there. And so I kind of, Creep Out has humor because it's a evil ventriloquist dummy who sort of speaks in jokes, but I play that very seriously. Whereas I have a early novel called The Sinister Mr. Corpse, which plays everything for laughs. It's a zombie novel, but it's a full-on comedy. So I kind of mix it up, but it's really just my natural tendencies. I don't say, okay, this book needs to be really, really funny. I kind of start with the horror premise and then just the humor gets layered over it.
Do you think that horror writers should read? I hate this question. I keep asking it because I think I'm looking for something, and maybe you'll have it, Jeff. Do you think that it's important for horror writers to cross genres, to read comedy, romance, fantasy, all that stuff, to put it in there, what they're doing? I mean, do you think it's an important thing to read a wide spectrum?
Yes, I don't know that it's necessarily, as research for what you're trying to write. It can't hurt to, study other stories. I for a long time, all I was reading was horror, and I made a conscious decision. There's lots of other stuff out there. So, reading something like The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay turned into one of my all-time favorite books. So it's good to read that kind of stuff. I finally read Lonesome Dove and, a lot of the big epics, and it's good to look at other storytelling styles, good to, but you don't necessarily have to read a bunch of fantasy novels and then say, okay, I'm gonna incorporate that into what I write. It's just always good to have a, you know, wide range of reading interests and then, just figure out what you really like and, if there's stuff that you can take back with you, great. But I don't know that it's necessarily I need to study every genre to help me write better horror.
But do you think that on the flip side of that, do you think that by reading, say, Lonesome Dove, which is an amazingly well-written book, do you think that that does affect your writing?
It the the way it would affect my writing is basically the inspiration of you close the last book after the last page and think I need to step up my game because I'm not writing at that level. And you realize, how well the characters are done, how well the dialogue is done, how intense, that book gets really dark at points, how intense that is. And it's just, it's the inspiration of a very well told story. And I need to, also do my best work, not at that level, but the best that I can do. So from that standpoint, when I read the event, The Amazing Adventure of Cavalier and Clay, it doesn't make me say I need to write a 900 page, historical epic, but it does say I need to, be doing my best work because there's stuff out there that blows my work away.
So if you meet a young author, somebody comes up to you, let's say at a thing called like Books and Brews, which is a double clutch brewing company in Evanston, Illinois, on August 3rd. Let's say they come up to you and they're like, I'm trying to write horror. I've been working on it. And they say, what's the one piece of advice you got? Jeff, what is the one piece of advice you'd have for a budding horror author?
The generic one would be read a lot and write a lot. Don't be afraid to have trunk novels because, I'm old school. So in my day, you would write the book, it would get rejected because it was bad, and then eventually it would become a trunk novel and you'd never publish it, and then you'd start on the next one. It would also get rejected because it was bad, but in the meantime, you're learning to write. And then by the time you'd written a few books, you were writing at a professional level. I've got thousands of pages of unpublished stuff that will never be published because it's not good enough. Now, a lot of people are going straight to self-publishing, which is totally fine. I love self-publishing. Most of my recent work has been self-published, but what it removes the gatekeepers possibly to a fault. And so people think, well, I finished a book. What am I going to do with it? Well, maybe that was just a learn to write book. And I think that in a lot of cases, because you can have a book up on Amazon 12 hours after it's done, the people forget that it's okay to write trunk novels that never get published. Because
Yeah.
you finish a book, what do I do with it? Well, maybe you just read it and then throw it away. So my advice is don't be in a hurry to get published, and it's okay to learn to write on the job. So
Excellent answer. I loved it. Okay, now you've been to Chicago before,
yes.
but you're going to be back here. What is the thing you are most looking forward to doing or seeing when you're here in Chicago?
Excluding Books and Brews itself, I'm most excited for a Chicago dog in Chicago. Chicago style hot dogs are my favorite. I love Portillo's. I wish it had, I wish they were everywhere, but they're not. So whenever I get into that area, a Portillo stop is always mandatory. So yes, it's a lame answer, but the Chicago style hot dogs are what I'm looking forward to outside of the excitement of Books and Brews.
Excellent. I would challenge you to go to Superdog, which is not terribly
I've been to
far.
Superdog.
That's my favorite one. I love
All right.
Portillo's. I love all, but Superdog is the one. We used to drive back, we were living in Minneapolis, and before on the way back, we would pass my parents, we'd pass my wife's parents, we'd go to Superdog, then we'd come back, and typically it was Foodapalooza. We would come back, we'd go to stop and see her parents, and we'd go to my parents, and they would already have a Lou Malnati's pizza hot and ready for us. So yeah, within a couple hours of hitting Chicago, we already had Superdog and a Lou Malnati's in us because that's the way.
That is the way.
Jeff, thank you so much. I'll put links into the show notes so people can follow you, sign up for his newsletter. It's great. I think you just put one out yesterday or today, something. I read it. It's great. You have a great newsletter, Jeff. And buy his books. Come to Books and Brews. Get those books signed. Get selfies with Jeff. He'll sign anything. And just not a living tarantula. He does not want you bringing that. No.
Leave the live tarantulas at home, but otherwise, we'll all go out for super dogs afterwards.
Oh, now you're talking. Now you're talking. All right, Jeff, thank you so much. I really look forward to seeing you in August.
All right, see you there.
It would really help me out if you would rate and review this show on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast. Good reviews help others find the show, which ultimately helps the people I've interviewed get more exposure. You can connect with me on social media or via email. All the links are found in the show notes. If you like this show, you'll like other shows from Southgate Media Group as well, such as Read Between the Lines, a podcast featuring insightful interviews with some of the hottest authors out there, or Go Fund This, a podcast where we interview people about their amazing crowdfunding projects. You can find our shows wherever you listen to podcasts, so give them a try. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate and review our shows. It really helps other people find them and keep our team inspired. Alley Chats is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks again for listening to Alley Chats.